Ring of Bells Part 2. Well, Ring of Bells Part 4, Chapter 2. It's the middle of the night, growled the old man. What is it you want? Please, we need a doctor, Muddy told him. My son, he's very sick. Please. Then, from further inside the house came another voice, a woman's voice. Who is it, Hans? Is it more of them? Let them in. The door opened wider, and we saw then a lady in a dressing gown coming down in a huge wide staircase and then hurrying towards us across the hallway. She says they need a doctor, Countess, the old man said. They are both peering at us now, from behind the lamplight. We are from Dresden, Muddy told them. Am I seeing things? Lady asked, or is that an elephant? I can explain about that later, Muddy replied, but my son is ill, seriously ill, and I have to find a doctor. Please, it's urgent. The lady did not hesitate. She took Muddy by the arm and led her into the hallway. Come in, she said. I shall send for the doctor from the village right away. And Hans, you find a place for that animal in the stables. I had no idea that night who these people were, and neither did I care. We would soon have a doctor for Carlyle, and I had found shelter for him too. That was all that mattered, and it would be warm too. I could even smell food, but I did not get to go in right away. Muddy asked me to take care of Marlene and to make sure that she had something to eat and drink. So, led by Hans, the old man in the nightcap, who muttered angrily to himself the whole time, I took her round the side of the house, through a great archway and into a stable yard. I saw to it that she had all she needed, hay and water both, and left her to it. She seemed quite happy, happier certainly than the horses across the yard from her, who were becoming increasingly unsettled at the appearance of this strange intruder. As we walked back towards the house, the place seemed immense to me, more like a castle than a house. Hans was still grumbling on, but less to himself and rather more to me. Well, he could never get a good night's sleep any more. How it was bad enough that the Countess had opened her doors to all sundry, but now she was turning the stable-yard into a zoo. It was all too much, he said, too much. It was not until he was leading me back into the house and up the grand staircase that I began to see for myself what he was complaining about. Everywhere I looked, every centimeter of floor space was occupied. People were lying fast asleep in the corridors, on the landings, and I presumed in every room. And those that were not asleep were sitting there on straw-filled sacks, looking at me blankly as I passed by. There was bewilderment on every face I saw. Hans took me up to the top of the house, to the attic, where I saw Carlyle lying stretched out on a mattress by a fire with Muddy kneeling over him, bathing his forehead. Peter was busy piling more wood on the fire. He has a fever, Elizabeth, Muddy said, looking up at me, her eyes full of tears. He's burning up. Where is the doctor? Where is he? For the rest of the night Carlyle lay there, tossing and turning, sometimes delirious, and all three of us took turns to try to cool him. None of us slept. We just sat there watching him, hoping the fever would leave him, longing for the doctor to come. When he did come at long last, the lady came with him, dressed now rather grandly, and all in black. The doctor examined him and said that Carlyle should be kept warm at all costs, and that the more water we could get him to drink, the better. The doctor gave us some medicine for Carlyle and told us that on no account was he to go out in the cold or travel until he was completely well again. It was only now, once he had gone, that the lady in black introduced herself. Everyone just calls me Countess, she said, shaking each of us rather formally by the hand. We do not bother much with names here. It's safer that way. I think we have about 70 refugees now in this house, all sorts, mostly families from the East resting up for a few days. Everyone is passing through. It seems as if the whole world is in flight. We have soldiers on their way home on leave or returning to their regiments at the front, some deserters no doubt, and we'll have a few vagrants too. I ask no questions. We have a hot meal only once a day at midday and then soup and bread in the evening. It is not much, but it is the best we can manage, I'm afraid. As you know, food is becoming very scarce everywhere now. You may stay as long as you like, certainly until the young boy is better, but I would not advise you stay much longer than that. The Russians are not so far away now, maybe a few weeks away, no more. The Americans are closer, by all counts, but who knows who will get here first. Muddy thanked her from the bottom of her heart for all her kindness towards us. Having said I asked no questions, the Countess went on with a smile, I have to say I am rather curious about the elephant. As Muddy told her the story about working in the zoo, about Poppy being away fighting in Russia, and about our escape with Marlene from Dresden, the Countess listened intently. Intently. Then she said, I too had a husband in the army once, but he is dead now, and like you, I also have a son, like your husband. He is fighting the Russians in the east. Maybe they know one another. You never know. She was looking very directly at Peter now. My son is about your age, I think, she said, and he has brown eyes, deep set like yours. It is my greatest wish to see him again, alive and well. We can only hope. We stayed on with the Countess for several days. It took Carlyle 3 or 4 of those days to recover. Peter gave him the compass to look after, and that made him so happy. He would go to sleep clutching it in his fist. I remember he told Peter once that it was better than any teddy bear. And he said afterwards, when he was well again, that he was sure it was Peter's compass that had made him better in the end, and not the doctor's medicine. Muddy did not want to risk setting out again in our travels again until she was quite sure he was strong enough. The trouble was that the longer we stayed and the more comfortable we became, the more we did not want to leave. We would sit down at midday with all the other refugees in the great dining hall and eat good, hot food. It was the Countess who was responsible for creating a feeling of great fellowship among us. She made us all so welcome. She took time and trouble with everyone. She was generous, too, and thoughtful. When Carlyle told her he was good at juggling one day, she gave him 2 tennis balls. If he was happy, it would help him get better, she said. Random thought, class. I'm thinking that this Countess is a lot like our virtues of generous, and the family right now is feeling gratitude for her generosity. Do you know what I mean? As the Countess had told us, all sorts of people were there, coming and ongoing, and everyone had a story to tell, and as it turned out, a song to sing as well. There was a group of 20 or so school children that arrived just a day or so after we did. These were the children we got to know best, and of course that was because of Marlene and my brother too. Once Carl told them, and naturally he wasted no time doing this, that he had an elephant living in the garden back at home, and we had brought her with us, that she was living out in the stable yard right now, we could not keep them away. Carl getting stronger every day now, it was impossible to keep him inside for long. Muddy tried to make him stay on his mattress up in the attic, but he was forever going missing. We always knew where to find him, of course. He would be down there with Marlene, both of them surrounded by a large audience of admirers. The school children were utterly amazed by the elephant, and they loved to watch Carlyle do his juggling tricks too. What they loved best of all was when Carl decided he would perform his juggling act high up there astride Marlene's neck, and that how Carlyle's quite unintentionally landed us all in very great danger. One afternoon, I came into the stable yard with Peter and Muddy, looking for Carlyle, who had disappeared yet again. We saw him sitting up there on Marlene and juggling away. There was a whole crowd around him. Hans, the Countess' manservant, was there, and 40, maybe 50 of our fellow refugees, and school children, and Carl was showing off even more than usual. As he juggled, he was telling everyone about how he had ridden Marlene all the way from Dresden. I shall never know what made him do it, but suddenly he just stopped juggling, plugged his hand into his pocket, and held up the compass. You know what this is? He said proudly. This is my big brother Peter's magic compass. He just follows where the arrows point, and we follow him. It is how we simply get here. Simple. Juggle with it, one of the school children called out. I bet you cannot do it with 3. Then they were all clamoring for him to dare him to do it. Go on, Carl, go on. I shouted at him not to. But he knew even that it was no use, that he would be unable to resist the temptation to show off for everyone. I pushed my way through the crowd to try to stop him, but I was too late. He was already juggling by the time I got there, with the 2 balls and a compass. For a while it looked fine. He was juggling brilliantly. I had seen him juggling as many as 4 balls before, many a time, and he had hardly ever dropped one. I'm sure it's because of all the hullabaloo the crowd was making that Marlene was becoming a little unsettled. She was wafting her ears and swaying from side to side, sure signs she was agitated. Then she lifted her trunk and shifted forward suddenly, throwing Carla off balance. I saw the compass flying high into the air. I dashed forward to try to catch it. I think I knew it was hopeless, that it was way out of my reach. There was no way I could make it. I tripped then and fell heavily. When I looked up, I saw that Hans had caught the compass and was holding it in his cupped hands. I was just relieved it was not broken. The children were all clapping and cheering, and I had noticed before that Hans never smiled. He was not smiling now either, despite all the applause. He was turning the compass over in his hands, examining it carefully. He flicked it open and then looked up at Carlyle. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. "It is not German. This looks like a British compass, or American. A German compass would have O for Ost and E for Ost, and English is East. And there is English writing on it, too. Where did you get it?" A sudden silence had descended on the stable yard. Carl for once had nothing to say. His eyes met mine. He was begging for help, but I couldn't think of anything to say either. "I asked you, where did you get it from?" Hans said again. "From me." It was Muddy's voice from behind me. She had Peter with her and came through the crowd towards me. She put her arm on my shoulder. "My husband gave it to me, a gift. He is fighting the Russians now, but at the beginning of the war he was in France, in Normandy, and he told me he got it off a British pilot who had been shot down. It was his, and now it is mine," she said. I admired her so much at that moment. I knew she was brave, but I had no idea it would be this intensive. Hans hesitated for a long time. I could see he had his doubts, but he was still not sure he believed her. "Thank you," Mutty went on, "for catching it. I mean, I would have hated to see it lying there smashed on the ground. It was the last gift I had from my husband. It has brought us all the way from Dresden, you know. So far, lots of reasons. You can see it's very precious to me, to my whole family. Thank you." Hans seemed more satisfied now. He thought for a while and then nodded slowly before handing it over to her at last. "It is not a toy," he said. "I do not think little children should be playing with such a thing." "I quite agree," Muddy replied, with a shrug and smile, "but you know how children are. Don't you worry. I will see that he does not do it again. I promise you." She looked up at Carlyle. She did not have to pretend to be angry with him. Carlyle knew it. He was looking quite shamefaced and sheepish. "Carlyle, will you get down off the elephant this minute and come with me?" Peter wanted to help him down, and once we had seen Marlene safely back to her stable, we all walked away, but I could feel Hans's eyes on us all the time. After supper that same evening, the Countess got up and clapped her hands to quiet everyone down. "What many of you don't know," she began, "that the school children we have with us from Chapel Choir in Dresden. I have asked if they would sing something for us. In these terrible times I think it is only music that can bring us some joy and peace of mind. Only last Christmas, they told me, they sang the Christmas Oratorio by Johann Sebastian Bach, who is for me the greatest German who ever lived. They have very kindly agreed to sing some of it for us now." As they were singing, I found I could lose myself completely in the music. I could forget all the dreadful things that were going on in the world. I felt cocooned in this heavenly music. It seemed to warm me all through. It was a glow that lingered long after the singing had finished. I was still hearing it again in my head when we were back upstairs in our attic room that night, huddled under our blankets. The music had affected us all just as deeply, I think. We could even talk about nothing else. Even Muddy had stopped being angry with Carlyle about the compass incident. "I only wish Poppy could have been there with us to hear his beloved Bach," she said. "He would have loved it so much."